due to this little microscopic bacteria, I ended up losing my legs below the knees. I lost my spleen. I lost my kidney function. I lost the hearing in my left ear. I fought for my life. For a couple months, I was on life support. And my entire life changed. I walked into the hospital and I was wheeled out, and without my legs and without the health that I had, and with my entire life changing and having to really reimagine the possibilities and step into the world, not having any idea what my life was going to look like. But ultimately, it led me to amazing places.
Welcome to the Beyond Speaking podcast from Premier Speakers Bureau, featuring in-depth conversations with the world's most in-demand keynote speakers.
Hi, I'm Brian Lord, president of Premier Speakers Bureau. Welcome to the Beyond Speaking podcast. Our guest today is Amy Purdy. Amy has defied the odds throughout her life and overcome a near-death experience to accomplish some extraordinary things. She's a 3-time Paralympic medalist, one of Oprah's top 100 thought leaders, a Dancing with the Stars runner-up, a New York Times best-selling author, and the host of the critically acclaimed podcast all about resilience called Bouncing Forward. So Amy, thank you so much for coming on and being here on the Beyond Speaking podcast.
Thank you. I'm excited. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, I've booked you for a lot of clients, and everybody loves you. That's one of the fun things that they get to be in this. So I'm curious to know, like, when you were a child, were you that kid who could do anything? Like, if I were to go back and talk to 9-year-old Amy, she would say, well, of course I was a best-selling author and a Paralympic legend and all that. So were you that kid growing up?
Absolutely not. And I'm sure if you asked my parents, they would say the same thing. In fact, I went through a lot at the age of 19 where I lost my legs, my life changed forever. And my parents at that time were like, there is no way that Amy can handle this, because I was more of this just very emotional, intuitive, I could cry because dogs are cute. I wanted to save all these animals. I could cry at a sunset. I was just a kind of more emotional kid, not really athletic that I knew of, because my family wasn't into sports. So I didn't grow up as an athlete at all. I will say all the things that I went on to accomplish, I kind of, discovered along the way, realized, I am an athlete. Oh, I can write and I love writing, or, and I can speak. I'm actually very much so an introvert. And yet I'm on stage speaking to, thousands of people, but that's something that's like a skill that I've had to learn as well. So when I go back to young Amy, I will say kind of a connecting thread is that I was always a storyteller. So I would get in trouble in class. I remember my 2nd grade teacher bringing my mom in and saying, well, Amy's quite the storyteller, because she would ask, if we had questions, and I'd raise my hand and I'd have a story to tell. And she's like, that's not a question, not the story. And so it's kind of interesting just to remember that I love to tell stories, and then to go on to be basically a professional storyteller. I think that's the thread that continued, but everything else, I just kind of discovered along the way.
Yeah, and that's really interesting that you aren't afraid to learn new things. I remember one time my daughter said, Dad, I'm 10. I can't learn how to play basketball. I'm so far behind. So when you've come up with these challenges, so obviously, and I do want to get to the story of, how you lost your legs in a minute here, but what, if you're giving advice to somebody on how to start new things, how did you decide to start being a speaker or a dance contestant or all these, when you are starting a new thing, what do you do?
So, again, if I think back to when I was young, I don't think I was much of a risk taker. I don't think I really did things that was outside of the box. I think that I got to a point in my life, and when I lost my legs and I almost lost my life, I realized how quickly life can change. I realized how we only have this moment and we don't know if we have tomorrow. So what do we want to be today? And I don't want to have regrets. I don't want to feel like, I was too scared to do that. I don't want to be on my deathbed, which now I can think about death a lot because I was face to face with it. I don't want to be on my deathbed thinking back, God, I should have done that. Why didn't I do that? Why didn't I try that? And I kind of realized when I lost my legs and this crazy thing happened to me, that anything can happen at any time. So that also means that's good or bad. Like anything can happen. You can get sick and lose your legs. Or maybe I can step into the world and try something new and challenge myself and see what the possibilities are. So really, I became more of like a risk taker and believing in the possibilities and wanting to chase the possibilities after I lost my legs. Like even the vision of becoming a professional athlete wasn't until I lost my legs, which is pretty ironic.
Yeah, I mean, that's amazing. So can you take us through that day? So you're at work and things start to go sideways.
Yeah. So I was living in Vegas. That's where I was born and raised. And I was a massage therapist. My plan was just to travel the world, and I'd have this job that would travel with me. I also snowboarded. I was a passionate snowboarder. So I thought I can be a ski bum, travel the world, and I just need my massage table in my hands. I ended up going back to Vegas to work for a world-class spa, which I loved. I absolutely loved my job. I loved helping people, healing people. I loved that people walked away feeling better. And I remember waking up and going to work one day, feeling completely normal. But halfway through my day, I started to feel like I was coming down with the flu. And so I went home from work early. I had a slight temperature, nothing too bad. And my family actually went out of town. And I just said, you know what, I probably have a 24-hour flu or something. I'll just meet up with you guys later. But that afternoon, instead of feeling better, I started to feel worse. And at one point, my mom called to check on me. And I said, Mom, I feel like I'm dying. But I was always a little bit dramatic, I guess. And my mom's like, you have the flu and you always feel like you're dying when you have the flu. And that's really, what I thought it was. But within 24 hours of that first flu-like symptom, I was in the hospital on life support, given less than a 2% chance of living. It ended up not being the flu. It was something called bacterial meningitis. We have no idea how I got it. We just know that it's this bacteria that 1 in 4 people carry. So it's somewhat common, but not common to get sick from. And it spread like the flu or the cold. So somebody could have just sneezed on me and maybe that's how I got it. But due to this little microscopic bacteria, I ended up losing my legs below the knees. I lost my spleen. I lost my kidney function. I lost the hearing in my left ear. I fought for my life for a couple of months. I was on life support. And my entire life changed. I walked into the hospital and I was wheeled out, and without my legs and without the health that I had, and with my entire life changing and having to really, really reimagine the possibilities and step into the world, not having any idea what my life was going to look like. But ultimately, it led me to amazing places.
How did you learn that you could actually move on your legs?
Gosh, I mean, it was just baby steps, and it wasn't easy and it wasn't early on. I mean, when I first started to walk in my prosthetics, it was the most uncomfortable thing I've ever experienced. And the amount of fear that I had because of the uncertainty was enormous. Like, I thought, how am I going to move in this world? How am I going to snowboard again? Let alone just even walk again. How am I going to travel the world and live a life of stories and excitement like I always envisioned? And I really just had to take one step at a time. And then, just like anything in life, the path starts to reveal itself. I knew that I wanted to get back to snowboarding, but there's no way that I envisioned myself being an Olympic or Paralympic medalist. That wasn't even at the beginning a possibility. I just knew that I was passionate about snowboarding. So I took the baby steps. I actually gave myself a goal that I was going to snowboard, I wasn't going to miss a season of snowboarding because I never did. And I thought, just because I lost my legs doesn't mean I'm missing out on snowboarding this year. So I did everything I could between physical therapy and getting my legs right. And I was 83 pounds at that time because I was so sick when I left the hospital. I still had tubes and all this stuff when I went up to the mountain for the first time, but I made the goal to get on my snowboard and just see how it would go. And I did it that year, even though my legs came off and, my ankles wouldn't bend and it was a complete mess and I couldn't feel my feet on the ground and I was slipping all over the snow. And I mean, it was nothing like I felt before and nothing that I had envisioned, but it was the first step. And once I did that, even though I felt very kind of defeated, literally at the beginning, I thought, well, hold on. If I can get my detachable legs to stay attached to my body, if I can get my ankles to move the way I need them to, maybe I actually can do this again. And I think that's what really got me excited. The challenge of figuring it out is what got me excited and what kept me moving forward. So I ended up making a pair of feet that I could snowboard in, and that took me down a path where I then knew that I could train and then had this vision of what if snowboarding was in the Paralympics and what if I could actually, help other people learn to snowboard as well. And so my husband and I started an organization called Adaptive Action Sports. We helped to get snowboarding into the Paralympics. And so it's so interesting because it wasn't like at the very beginning I had these huge goals of I'm going to snowboard all over the world or be on Dancing with the Stars. None of that really seemed possible. But once you take the first step and you just kind of let the path unfold and reveal itself, then and every time you're taking that step, you're stepping into the unknown. You're stepping, that's what possibility is. You really are stepping into the unknown without knowing where you're going. It's taking a risk, but it's having enough of a belief that there's a reason you're here and having enough curiosity to try new things and to let yourself fail and to figure it out. And so one thing just led to the next. That then led to Dance with the Stars and, some of the other things that I've done. And every time I surprised myself what I was capable of as well.
Yeah, and two, just what you're going through. Like, I find it amazing that your first big competition was 3 months after a kidney transplant. Like, that's just like all these other people. Like, I'm going to wait till everything's perfect. Like, no, I'm going to go and do that. I mean, what was it that led you to that? And then tell us about your first Paralympic experience too, if you could.
When I look back, I think something that I've done, and this is the first time I'm even thinking of it, but I've always set a goal before I knew I could do it. I set the goal and just said, okay, I better figure it out because I'm doing this in November. I'm doing this in 3 months. And so I knew that so I had connected early on with some other amputees who were snowboarders. And I thought, I want to connect with them. I need to learn what kind of legs they're using. Maybe we can learn from each other. And one of them had told me about a competition. It was like the very first adaptive snowboard competition. They were trying to pull everybody together that they knew who had prosthetic legs and snowboarded. And at that time, I didn't even have, it's like, I don't even know if I figured my legs out at that point. I knew that I had a kidney transplant coming up. My dad was the donor and it was amazing, but also terrifying stepping into that. That was one of the most kind of uncertain experiences of my life, was agreeing to have a kidney transplant. And yeah, I knew this competition was coming up just a few months after. And so I committed to it. I committed to the competition. I told my doctors, which, by the way, after a transplant, they don't want you traveling. They definitely don't want you snowboarding. And, your kidneys kind of, it's put in the front of you. So your abdomen, you're kind of exposed. It's not, your kidney's not safe up in your ribs like your real kidneys are. And so they're like, this is the end of snowboarding. This is the end of traveling. And I was like, this is just the beginning. And it was. And so I kind of set the goal and the date and had it in my calendar, like, okay, go into this competition in March, but first need to have a kidney transplant. And so it just kind of gave me a vision. It gave me something to look towards and forward to. It gave me something to work towards and gave me a goal. It gave me a deadline. And I ended up having the transplant and doing that competition and winning a couple medals. And at the time, it wasn't a huge competition, but it was really exciting because it showed me what what the possibilities were and what I could do. And then it gave me a bigger vision for what if we did more of this stuff. And that's when I started the organization with my husband. So I think that, again, it just, the path, it revealed itself as I took those steps. But I've always said yes before knowing how anything. And I think that's been the key, because when you commit to something, you will find a way. If you are not committed, there's plenty of excuses. You can say, well, I'm not ready. Well, I don't even have legs. How can I snowboard? There's plenty of excuses out there. Or you absolutely commit to something. And if you're committed, you will always find a way, and it doesn't matter what comes your way. And so I've put things on the calendar. I continue to do this, and it's hard to do because you want to feel confident before you step into something new. But in reality, the confidence comes in the doing. So you have to commit first, and you have to have courage, and then the confidence comes. But it really starts with the commitment of, okay, I'm not ready, but I'm putting it on my calendar and I'm going to do it. And if you're truly committed, you'll find a way.
I love it. So I don't know if you remember this, but we had an event, one of the very first big events after COVID, like I think February 2022. And I was sitting next to this executive, kind of like a big burly guy with a beard. He'd served multiple tours in Afghanistan. And he leans over to me and he says, Amy Purdy, she has the heart of a warrior. So where do you think that comes from in you? Where did you get that heart of a warrior from?
Gosh, I think, I had to survive. I had to survive, literally fight for my life and have something to fight for, have a reason to fight. And I had to find purpose in the outcome of it. And I think, gosh, it's interesting because I haven't really compared myself to that or heard that. But I guess I just, I didn't want to ever give up on myself, or on my dreams, or have what happened to me define me. I wanted to define what my life was going to look like. And I realized how short life can be, and I wanted to live the best life I could. And so, that comes with a lot of fighting. You have to fight through challenge, and you have to fight through, negative thoughts or even negative beliefs that other people have of you. Doctors would say, oh, we don't know if you'll ever snowboard again. Or, if I had ever told somebody that, oh, I was going to do Dancing with the Stars someday, that would be impossible, and I've had to really fight for my own possibilities and my own beliefs and just try to find a way, fight for it.
Yeah. One of the cool things you've been able to do is you were obviously Dancing with the Stars, but also Amazing Race. And one of the people I met there at the event was your husband, Daniel Gale. Nice, quiet guy, great hair. Everybody look up, Google his hair. But anyway, so what was it like competing with him on Amazing Race? I know the doctor said you're never going to travel anywhere. And then of course you go on Amazing Race. What was that like? What was your high point there?
Well, first I'll say you have to be your biggest advocate. Nobody's going to fight for you like you will. Nobody will fight for your dreams like you'll fight for your dreams. And I wanted to travel, and I had to find the right kidney transplant doctor who knew what I wanted to do, because all of them said, you can't snowboard again, you can't travel. I mean, because of a kidney transplant, your immune system is knocked down, and so they just don't like you to be, out in the world on airplanes and, in busy areas. And so, but I found a doctor. I went knocking down doors and found a doctor who worked with me and knew what my dreams and goals were, and knew that I was about ready to embark on this crazy, amazing race, and worked with me on it, which was amazing. And so we ended up, I will say it was a very full circle moment, because my dream really was to travel the world. And now I got the opportunity to do just that, but it took losing my legs to get there. And these legs have taken me to amazing places, which is amazing. And so, we did the Amazing Race, and It was incredibly challenging. We did very, very good. We're both very creative and resourceful. And I think that's why we work really well together. So I think we came in first or second place in the first 5 challenges, but then we got eliminated. So we got eliminated pretty early on. We had this whole cab situation that just was out of our control. We did well on the things we could control, but then all this, there's this travel and there's cabbies and all this other stuff that can happen. So I think a high point for me was just the overall idea that I wanted to travel the world, and now, here I'm doing it on 2 prosthetic legs, and it took losing my legs to get here. And I think that was one of the first moments where I started to really appreciate the journey that I had been on, that you can lose something but you can gain something else, or it's because of this challenge that can bring you to amazing places. I started to kind of see, well, I wouldn't be where I'm at today had I have not lost my legs. And so what else can I do? And if I step into the world with this idea of curiosity of like, wow, there's so many possibilities. There's so many things that we don't even know could happen. Like, the universe could have so much stuff in store for us, and you just can't give up on yourself. And I don't know, I think life is pretty magical the way that it tends to figure itself out.
I know. Well, speaking of impossible things, I mean, dancing is hard enough, but then to go on and do it with, everything you've gone through, to be on Dancing with the Stars and be, runner, beat so many people at that. What was that experience like? And what made you decide, okay, this is a good idea?
It took me a while. I was well into the show before I thought it was a good idea. Because I had no idea what to expect. I had never danced in my life. In fact, I tried out for my high school cheerleading team because my sister was a cheerleader, and I didn't make the team. And I tried out for the high school dance team. I didn't make that team. And that is when I had my legs. And so now I was being asked to dance, in front of millions of people on 2 prosthetic legs and be judged as well. And I really had no idea what to expect, but it was another one of those things where I thought, the opportunity is presenting itself, and I'll never know unless I take it. And I was very scared that I would make a fool out of myself. I think that people are expecting me to fail because I'm a girl with a disability, and they just want to kind of cheer for me and go, oh, yay for her. But I don't think anyone really expected me to do well. And I knew being an athlete, and I knew what it took to be committed and to figuring things out. So I had a certain level of, at least, I don't want to say confidence, but some confidence of like, well, I've done hard things before, so I'll figure this out. So it's more courage, probably just stepping into my courage and saying, okay, we'll just figure it out as we go. And that's basically what we did. So the confidence didn't come till, the end of the show. I could basically say, oh, I did well. Now I'm confident. But the whole time I was just challenged. And every single week, it was almost like the Paralympics every week. The Paralympics is the biggest race in the world, and it's everything you're working towards. Dancing with the Stars was kind of like that every week because the world's watching. You can't make a mistake. It's going to live on YouTube forever. And then once that dance is done, it's done. You can't, if you make a mistake, it's not like you can go back and correct it and then come back out again. It is a one-shot thing. And I learned so much about myself. I learned about making mistakes and being able to just say, all right, I can step away from that and start fresh tomorrow, because you're not able to fix the mistake. You just have to keep continuing on. And throughout the whole show, we had to get creative. Everything that I had done in the past came into play. So with the Paralympics, trying to find the right feet or design the right feet, I had to do the exact same thing on Dance with the Stars. And I had to order different types of feet from different companies, and I would dance in running blades, or I would dance in these swimming feet because I needed to be able to point my toes. And the swimming feet are made for flippers, and so they're made for your toes to be pointed. And so I called this company, and I said, "Hi, my name's Amy Purdy. I'm on the TV show Dancing with the Stars. I was hoping I could order these feet to dance in." And they said, "Oh, these feet are made for swimming." And so then I called back the next day and I said, "Hi, my name's Amy Purdy. I was hoping I could order these feet to swim in." And they overnighted them to me, and I realized that I could balance on the very tips of my toes in them, just like a ballerina. And so I wore those feet for some of the dances, and we were challenged every single week. Every week, I had no idea if I would be able to do it. I was terrified stepping out on stage, and yet I would surprise myself. And it's just like the Paralympics. If you do the work ahead of time, then it kind of comes together in the moment when you need it most. Instead of, and actually, it's very much so like speaking as well. It's if you don't do the work ahead of time, then you're on stage sweating, trying to figure out what you're going to say. I mean, I think that's what some people's like worst fear is for speaking is, you get on stage and you freeze. But if you do the work ahead of time, then when you're out on stage, it flows naturally. And so I kind of took all these things that I've learned from speaking, from snowboarding, and applied them to Dancing with the Stars, and had to just trust that I did the work and that it would come. And somehow every week it did. So we were challenged greatly, but we were, I think we grew more creatively. We became more resilient. And I realized just how capable I was on these legs, and just how capable we all are. If we really, once again, if we're totally committed, we're willing to get creative, and if we're curious. I think that's the biggest thing is being curious to what is possible and allowing yourself to follow that curiosity.
That is a great story. I love that. I mean, just the things that you would have to think of that no one else would have to. I mean, there was no one else thinking those things about what legs to order for this week's show. I mean, that's just feet to order. That's just amazing. One of the things I really like about you is giving back. I know you've mentioned it a couple of times now. Adaptive action sports. What has that been like for you? And do you have any like success stories, like favorite athletes that have come out of that, or just things that people you're proud of that you want to brag on?
Oh gosh, we've worked with so many great athletes, and it's amazing. I mean, we really started the organization to create a community of people that were like-minded, and I think we created what I needed at the time. I wanted to snowboard and be around other people who snowboarded and learn from them, and so we created this organization to pull people together and just see who's out there in the world who's not just snowboarding, but skateboarding, mountain biking, wakeboarding, kind of all the action sports that my husband and I love. And so we started the organization really with those intentions, but then we started to realize, wow, there are some really good snowboarders out there. And that's when I was, working towards my snowboarding as well. And so we ended up pushing to get snowboarding in the Paralympic Games. And in 2014, we were successful in doing that. And now it's taken on an entire life of its own. I actually was an NBC commentator for the Paralympics last year. So I got to call the snowboard races, and it's just wild to think of where we began. And now I'm watching these just incredible athletes from all around the world competing at the highest level. And we train many of them. So going into the 2018 games, I think we trained 8 out of the 13 athletes that made the U.S. snowboarding team. And that included 2 young wounded veterans as well. And also our house, so we bought this home in Colorado, and we bought it keeping in mind that we always had people crashing on our couches or like crashing on our floor, like they come up to snowboard. And so we bought this house that has multiple living spaces. So our basement is a full built out apartment with a kitchen. And then we've got kind of, another apartment above our garage. And so we've got athletes that will stay here and train with us full time. And one of our athletes, his name is Zach Miller, he has trained with us, and we have pretty much raised him since 15 years old. And he just this past week, so first of all, he went to his first Paralympic Games last year, which was so exciting. But just this past week, he won multiple world championship titles.
Wow.
And so it's almost like he's been our kid, kind of, and he came in early. He has CP, and so he's had to learn how to snowboard and, do all of this with his disability. And we've been able to raise him literally, like we were with him for every birthday since he was 15 years old.
Wow.
And then now to see all the hard work, now he's 23. So all the hard work and all the years that went into now coming out with, world championship titles is just really exciting. So we've got a lot of different athletes that we work with, and it makes me feel good to watch them do good, and to also, and I know that a lot of them look up to me for what I've been able to do, and so it's nice to be a mentor for them and to also show them what's possible. And so I help them with their speaking. They'll have a speech here and there, and I'm like the speaking coach for everybody. But it's been really rewarding.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, share. This has been amazing. I've really enjoyed it, and just thank you for giving back and just inspiring so many people. It's very incredible what you're doing.
Well, thank you so much. I love working with you, and this was fantastic. A lot of fun.
Great. Well, thank you, Amy. So for those listening and watching, make sure to subscribe, rate, and review. And of course, you can check out Amy Purdy at premierspeakers.com. So Amy, thanks again so much for joining us on the Beyond Speaking podcast.
Thank you for joining us for the Beyond Speaking podcast. To learn more about today's guest, visit premierspeakers.com. Make sure to subscribe and leave a review wherever you listen.